Hello viewers, welcome to Core for Any. If you hear new, hit subscribe buttons and notification bell so you can never miss any our incredible content. Node.js app and backends API inside today we need to create here. Driver waiting users API we need to develop. Then after need to develop here the write starts API need to develop here today two API. First of all, need to write down here the post methods for this API. We need to creatings. Need to write down here app dot post and need to write down here the slash API slash need to give this here the driver wait users. Then after need to callbacks functions need to write down here the request and response and to function operators need to use this here. Then after need to print this here the parameters need to write down here the helper dot dlogs and to write down here the response dot body you need to print this here. Now need to request objects you need to call this here and to save this here the request dot body you need to save this here like this. And then after you need to check this here the API callings are the valid access or not. So need to check this here. Write down here the check access tokens. So need to write down here. Now need to give this here the request dot header. So need to pass this here first parameters. And then after you need to write down here the response objects. So need to give in this here. And then after you need to check give this here the returns here. If valid, then to returns here the user objects need to get this here. Like this, you need to checking this API and to call this here. And then after now need to check here the parameters. You need to call this here the helper dot checks parameter valid. So need to check here. First of all, need to pass here the response objects. Then to give this here the request objects. Then we need to check this here. We need to need this here only the booking ID. We need to need this here. And we want to if valid then to get this here the response inside this callback functions and to call this here. Now here importance you need to give this here the waiting times. You need to set this here the clones for the this users. You need to need this here the which time need to clicking after the user not get then to drivers calling here the cancels. Like this you need to conditions here the apply here. First of all you need to set here the times for the request waiting times. Need to give in this here user waiting time. Const user waiting time. Need to give this here 5 minutes need to given this years after write cancel possible to driver sides. Now we need to callings here the write down here the functions here and to create first of all the db dot need to call this here the API update booking detail. Then to set here booking status is equal to question mark and update here the start time question mark set here the where and to write down here the booking ID question mark and given this here the driver ID. And condition would to also check here the booking status. less than question mark, and like this we need to set this here the conditions and to give this here the value. First of all need to give this here the BS waiting users. Status we need to set this here. Then after need to give this here the driver ID users object dot user ID. Then after need to give this here, maybe to make mistake to set here now. Then after need to give this here the booking ID request object dot booking ID like this sets. Then after user ID, and then after need to give this here the BS waiting users need to check here less than status, then to update the status. Now need to get here the result callbacks, and to function operators need to write down here. First of all need to check this here the error. If get any errors, then to write down here the throw http html errors, and to give this here the errors objects, and to pass here the response, and to return these functions no need next executions because here gets any errors. That's why now need to check here if results affected row more than 0, then to successfully update our status. Otherwise need to give this here the response bells, set here the status, set here 0, and to give this here the message msc error. Like this, you need to returning here the message for the help. Maybe give this here proper message user waiting this. And then after you need to get this here the successfully need to get here the length. Then we need to call this here the get here the durations. So need to identify here the pickup durations. Need to need this here. First of all create here the helper class, and to create here the duration time duration date 1 date 2, and to return here callback, write here the function. And first of all need to get this here the where now is equal to need to get this here movement, and to pass this here the date 1, then end is equal to movement, and to give this here the date 2 like this sets here. Now need to get here the where duration is equal to need to given this here movement dot durations, and to call this here the now difference bracket inside the, and need to pass this here and to get this here the durations. Now we need to get this here the total minute is equal to need to call this here the durations dot as minute, need to get this here like these functions. After we need to check this here the duration string is equal to need to write down here the movement dot utc, and to give this here the durations as millisecond. Then after need to create here the formats and to set this here as a minute seconds. Now need to check here total minute more than 60. Then to change this here the value to write down here capital H like this we need to returning here and to call this here return callback and to give this here the total minute and duration string we need to return this years like these two value we need to returning years and to call this years. Now save this year files. Then after need to go here and come and to write down here the helper dlog time durations we need to call this years. Now first we need to give this here the maybe make here needs here the data and not gets sorry for first of all we need to get this here the data for these users. Select bd dot star and ud dot push token. And after we need to give this here the ud dot user type not matters here not from booking details as we need to give this here it. And now need to write down here the inner join query. And to write down here the user detail as we need to give this here ud on methods we need to call this here ud dot user id is equal to bd dot driver id. Maybe not driver need to because need to send here because already drivers here to needs here the users need to send here the specific notifications and sockets for the driver waiting for you like this. Now need to write down here the where conditions where bd dot booking id is equal to question mark like this sets here. And now need to pass here the request object dot booking id. Now need to get here the results callback poly functions. Now if gets any errors need to throw the errors and to return these functions. Now need to get here the results and to write down here the if conditions result length we need to check this here more than 0 else parts no needs because always gets here the users. Now need to call these functions and to pass this here the result 0 dot pickup date. Then to call this here now times we need to calling this here the helper dot server times. Now need to callbacks need to get here the total minute and duration string no needs that to setting like this. Now need to write down here the waiting times need to identify here is equal to need to write down here the user wait times like this. Then check here total minute more than 0 and to check here wait plus total minute multiply by 16 like this. Need to calling this here. Now create another crons need to develop here first of all to write down here function driver user waiting time over. Give this here the booking ID and time. Need to pass this here to wait. Now need to create here the one time cron is equal to need to set times. Call here the function and to set here the time. Time multiply by the 100 like this need to set here. Now need to call this here remove and delete. Wait user time overs maybe not defined here. Need to stop define here const driver user wait here like this set here. Now need to go and to delete this key bk underscores and to concat with the booking ID like this. And also need to write down here one functions function remove drivers waiting users. Give this here the booking ID call here. Now need to set here the clear timeout. Give this here copy here these lines and to paste this here and to get this here the functions and also need to save here the functions copy and to set here this cron object for this object like this settings here and to give this here the cron and to clear this here and then after you need to call this here the delete here and to print this here and to call these functions remove booking ID. No need to second time write because already right here, that's why no needs. And to save this here now need to go and to use these functions inside here and to set here the time hours value to give this here the first of all the booking ID request object dot booking ID. Then after need to give this here the waiting times like this need to calling this years and to call this years like this value for these functions. And now need to identify here the sockets for these users And to give this here the specific message, we need to send this here and to check this here. Now we need to identify here the socket first of all, where user socket, and to give this here the control socket list, and to give this here ud place dot like this, and to call this here results 0, and to give this here user id, and to get this here the sockets for these users. Now need to check here the if conditions user socket, and call this here the controller IO socket sockets, and to give this here the dot get use this here dot socket id, and to create here the brackets like this. We need to calling this here. Now we need to create here the response, where response object is equal to create here, where status is equal to colon equal to 1. Then after need to give this here the payload, create here the array, node array. Need to write down here the booking id is equal to pass here the parse int, give this here the request object dot booking id. Then afterwards need this here the awaiting times, and afterwards need to give this here the booking status, bs await users, and to like this need to create series. Now need to send here the message, and to write down here driver waiting. Like this need to create here the objects, and to fire this here, and to write down here the call this here, and to call here the emit methods, and to write down here driver wait for users events, and to pass this here the response objects. Like this need to calling here for these users, and to call this here, and also need to fire here push notifications for these functions, to call this here the one signal push fires. First of all need to give this here the user types, need to give this here the one. Then after need to pass this here the tokens, need to give this here the results 0, and to give this here the push token. Then after need to pass this here the titles for this push sendings, need to given this here the titles nt driver waiting. Then after need to give this here the message, need to pass this here the message driver is waiting. Then after need to give this here the message data, we need to pass this here, and to set this here the data. First of all, need this here and to write down here the notifications ID. Give this here the NT waiting, like this set here, and to calling this here, and then after these notifications are the firing. And now need to get this here the booking informations for display details. Need to pass this here the request object dot booking ID. Then after to give this here the type 2, and to get this here the reach status and result. Like this, we need to calling this here, now need to check here status not equal to 0. Then to request object 0 awaiting, and to give this here the waiting time. And to send this here the response.json set here 1 payload, and to pass here the results here, and to return here message user notify. Like this, creating here the API for the driver waitings, need to calling this here. Now another API we need to develop here. First of all, so need to write down here the app.post API slash, need to give this here the red start. Now need here some copy and paste. Copy here. Now another parameters need this here. Pick up latitudes, pick up longitudes, and OTP code. Like this, we need this here the parameters. We need to check this here the this API, and to call this here. Now need to write down here the SQL query is equal to, need to write down here update booking detail as we need to set this here the BD, and to call this here inner joins user detail, as we need to give this here the driver details on UD dot user ID DD not UD, is equal to ed dot driver ID. Another inner joins need this here. First of all, need to copy here for the users UD and to write down here the user ID like this here. Then after another inner join and to write down here service details as need to give this here the HD on methods to call this here the bd dot service ID is equal to HD dot service ID like this need this here the joins. Now need to set here the commands set value need to write down here the bd dot first of all need to get here the booking status question mark. Then after need to give this here the pickup actual which place to pick these users pickup location need to check inside the pickup latitudes and longitudes call here pickup latitudes question mark and bd dot pickup longitudes question mark like this need to call here and after need to give this here the start time and bd dot is equal to now and also updates here the dd dot status Nico change here to and ud dot status set here to now also need to update here the bd dot otp code question mark like this sets and to write down here the random create here otp code is equal to need to write down here the math for 100 math random multiply by like this calling sears and to pass the sears and now to write down here the where conditions need to apply here bd dot status question mark not status id and bd dot booking status and bd dot driver and also need to check this here the bd dot otp question mark now need to pass this here the value gets errors results and to copy here some error functions need to paste this here db dot query sql. Now need to give this here the one by one small value. Need to put this here. First of all, need to give this here the status. We need to set this here bs dot start. Then after pickup address, pickup longitudes, latitudes, and longitudes. And after we need to set here the OTP code, creating shares, given shares. Then after we need to give this here the request dot booking ID. Then after we need to give this here the booking status bs start. Then after we need to give this here the driver ID, view object dot user ID, pass this here. Then after we need to give this here the request dot OTP code. Like this, need to passing this here the value. Now need to check here the results affected row more than 0 and successfully creating. Otherwise need to return this here the else message. Need to print this here ride not started. Started. Yeah. And also need to write down here the remove user waitings and to give this here the request object. Call this here the request object dot booking ID and to removing this waiting time. Now same as you need to copy again, so need this here return this value, copy here and to paste this here and to return this response and to give this here the booking status and this results you need to returning here ride started successfully. Return this like message. Now again so need this here the this data, copy here and to paste this here. Over these brackets and to call this here if query. Now need to get this here the booking related information, so need to getting this here. Also need to inner joins to write down here the price detail tables as ed dot price id is equal to need to get here ed on to write down here ed dot price id like this. And also need to give this here the inner join, give this here the service detail as liquid this here as on bd dot service id is equal to sd dot service id. Like this, need to inner joins need to call this years, but maybe no needs here service side details. Need to needs here the minimum price pd dot minimum. Now find out here the user sockets. Then after need to pass this here some value. Need to set here the booking status at driver started, and to write down here the send here the sockets names, write start, and to return this years. Remove this years and to write down here the phone number status, write start, bs start, and maybe typo here. To save this years and to sending this year the notifications, and to like this we need to calling here, and this start right api are the done. If you like this video, please give the thumbs up. If you're new user, so please subscribe my channels and press the notification bell icon. You can get every new video notifications and awesome content. If you any question, so please write down the comment sections. I will help you and sort out your issue. Everyone have a nice day. Goodbye and take care. And next video inside we need to show here creates here the red stop api we need to develop inside the node.js.